For the first time, the WNBA isn't just a league trying to grow. It's a movement with a single, undeniable gravitational pull. Caitlin Clark, the player who shifted everything from draft night onward. The one who made casual fans tune in, sponsors take notice, and billionaires start calling emergency meetings. But when billionaires lose patience, dreams crumble. And in Indiana, that reckoning might already be here. Because behind the scenes, whispers are growing louder that Steve Simon, the quiet billionaire pulling the strings behind the Indiana Fever, has finally reached his breaking point. And his sights? They're set squarely on head coach Stephanie White. It started as quiet tension, a few disagreements in meetings, some awkward locker room moments, but by late October, it was clear something much deeper was brewing. Insiders close to the Fever organization began to leak the same story. Simon wants a change, and he wants it before the next season tips off. To the casual fan, that sounds sudden. To those paying attention, it's the inevitable fallout of a slow-building storm. Every awkward press conference, every questionable lineup decision, every icy postgame handshake, this has been coming. And now Simon isn't asking questions anymore. He's preparing the final move in a power play that could redefine the franchise. The Fever season was supposed to be a turning point, a moment when hope returned to Indiana. Caitlin Clark's arrival alone made the team relevant again, pulling the league into a new era of visibility and excitement. Yet instead of unity, Indiana became a battleground of ideas. Stephanie White, disciplined, principled, rooted in the old-school values of teamwork and defense, believed in building slowly and teaching accountability. But Simon, a businessman to his core, saw something else. He saw entertainment, star power. He wanted to model the Fever after the NBA's most profitable franchises, where the system bends to the superstar, not the other way around. Clark was the product, the centerpiece, the billion-dollar brand in the making. Every other piece, including White, was optional. The breaking point came during a private strategy meeting when White reportedly cautioned that focusing too heavily on one player could stunt long-term development. Simon interrupted, cold and certain, "We're not developing. We're building a product." Those words, according to insiders, ended any chance at reconciliation. From that day on, the organization was split in two. One side stood with White, the coach who still believed in the soul of the game. The other side fell in line with Simon's vision, seeing the future through Clark's shadow. Players began to choose sides without saying a word. Practices became tense. Locker room conversations shortened. Huddles lost energy. The Fever were no longer playing as one, they were performing for two masters. Then came the so-called internal review, Simon's preferred method of control. Executives were quietly told to assess every leadership role based on organizational alignment, a polished way of saying agree or disappear. It wasn't about tactics. It was about loyalty. Simon wanted people who believed in his blueprint: offense, branding, influence. Behind closed doors, a list of potential replacements began to circulate. Young coaches fluent in analytics, social media, and the Caitlin Clark system. Some even had Iowa roots, a direct link to Clark's basketball DNA. Others came from the NCAA world, where personality-driven programs thrive. The search was happening under the radar, but for those inside the Fever offices, the outcome already felt decided. Stephanie White's name was fading from the conversation, and yet the emotional fallout has been enormous. Veteran players, many of whom credit White for rebuilding their confidence through years of losing seasons, were reportedly devastated. "We didn't even get a chance to fight for her," one said privately. Others, younger and closer to Clark, chose silence, a silence Simon's circle interpreted as support. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark herself, ever the professional, stayed quiet and focused. She wasn't fighting against it, but she wasn't fighting for it either. To the billionaire owner, that was permission enough. No comment meant no resistance. And in the world of high-stakes sports business, silence often seals fates. Officially, of course, nothing has happened. The organization issued the same empty statement they always do: "We're evaluating our direction." But inside Pacers Sports and Entertainment, the mood tells a different story. Employees have been told to avoid speculation, to stay off social media, to be ready for change. PR teams are drafting transition language just in case. The machine is already moving. Because when Steve Simon decides to replace someone, it doesn't happen with fireworks. It happens with precision. A polite press release, a thank you quote, and a new face announced before anyone can catch their breath. For Simon, it's not personal, it's business. Since Caitlin Clark's arrival, the Fever's revenue has skyrocketed. Ticket sales, sponsorships, merchandise, all at historic highs. But every dollar flows through Simon's company. So when the team's chemistry faltered and the headlines soured, he didn't see emotion. He saw brand damage. He doesn't care about locker room harmony. He cares about numbers. And to him, Stephanie White wasn't failing as a coach. She was failing as a brand ambassador. That's why the next hire won't just be about basketball IQ. It'll be about marketability. The next coach will be expected to sell just as much as they win, and that's what terrifies those close to the organization. Because when everything becomes about control and image, the spirit of the game fades. Stephanie White represents the last thread of what the Indiana Fever used to be. A team built on loyalty, connection, and pride. Simon represents what it's becoming, a corporate powerhouse chasing dominance through profit. If he gets his way, Indiana may rise higher than ever, but it may lose its heart in the process. Fans are already split. Some say Simon is right to modernize, to build around the league's brightest star. Others argue he's destroying what made the Fever special. This isn't basketball anymore, one fan posted. It's business in a jersey. And that's the tragic irony. Caitlin Clark, the player who united fans across the country, may be unknowingly dividing her own franchise. Not through fault, but through the immense pressure of her own success. This is more than a story about one team. It's about the future of women's basketball itself, how power, money, and influence are reshaping it in real time. Steve Simon's playbook is ruthless but effective. Find the superstar, center the empire around her, and eliminate all resistance. Whether it works will define not only the Fever's next chapter, but the WNBA's direction as a whole. Because when billionaires start treating sports like a startup, emotion becomes collateral damage. So here's the truth. Stephanie White's days in Indiana may already be numbered. The decision might already be signed, sealed, and waiting for the right PR moment. But when it's announced, don't expect fireworks. Expect a headline, a brief statement, and a carefully worded thank you. The Fever will move on, and Steve Simon's vision will reign supreme. The jerseys will stay the same, but everything else will change. Do you think Steve Simon is making the right call, or is he tearing down the soul of the franchise piece by piece? Should the Fever embrace the entertainment model, or protect the culture that made them champions in the first place? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every one of them. And if you're passionate about stories like this, where sports meets power, business meets loyalty, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because this saga isn't over yet. The next headline could drop any day, and when it does, the Fever's history might be rewritten forever.